If there were awards given out for the people who ruined their lives the most, I guess I would be in with a shot of winning first place. I'm most definitely not trying to make light of what happened to me, but knowing what I know now, I look back at the things I did and cringe with a sense of embarrassment and sadness. I don't know whether it was a case of simply not being in the right frame of mind at that moment in time, or if I let excess and enjoyment cloud my better judgment. Either way, ever since that happened to me, I don't know if I'll ever regain that same level of confidence and happiness that I thought I had at the time. Thailand was a place where your wildest dreams could come true. It was a place where you could do something that, if you did it in your own country, you would never be able to get away with it. But in Thailand, it felt like you could do no wrong. It felt like, in Thailand, you could do anything you pleased, regardless of if the things you were doing may make people back at home turn their nose up at you. You didn't care because you weren't home. You were in the Garden of Eden. You had the ticket to the promised land in your back pocket every single day, and all you needed to do to get to the promised land was spend 5 minutes travelling there, and the world was simply your oyster. I'm not trying to be overly poetic here, but I'm trying to describe my feelings at the time which caused me to do the things I did. If I don't try to explain why I did what I did, I would look like an even bigger pillock than I probably will look. That's the thing I would like to emphasize, really. It's one thing to say to someone, I destroyed my life by going to Thailand and doing some stupid things. And you could tell someone what those stupid things were. They would look at you with scorn, like you'd completely lost the plot, or like you must come from a different planet entirely. But that only paints half the picture. That only paints the things I did and how it went wrong. It definitely doesn't paint the picture of why I did what I did in the first place to cause me to do such stupid things. It just felt like, in Thailand, the rules didn't matter anymore. Any kind of sensibility didn't matter anymore, and any kind of self respect just didn't matter anymore. Respect for your fellow man didn't matter anymore. I'm not saying that I didn't respect people, of course I did, but it wasn't like you had to. It was like you were coming from the outside with money in your pocket, and that money gave you the ability to be a really not nice person. Not on purpose, not willingly or gladly, but just to do things that you would never have even considered doing where you came from. Because in Thailand, it felt like that was expected of you. Not only expected, it was like, if you're coming to Thailand, you have to do these things, and if you don't, you're just wasting your time there. Thailand was there for the taking, and I was going to take my piece of it. A guy, fed up with life at home, searching for his place in the world, where he wasn't just another sheep turning up to work every day and going home again to find out that his wife wasn't the wife he married. I didn't want to be a sheep anymore. I didn't want to be part of the grind anymore. I wanted an escape from that, and I think I just took things too far. I will get into it, but if I have to paint an accurate picture of how I felt, it wasn't just that I wanted to escape my old life. It was that my old life didn't give me anything that I dreamed of having. It didn't even come close to giving me 1% of what I dreamed of having in my life, when everything went wrong, that was. And it felt like in Thailand, I could have what I wanted. But I just needed to turn the volume knob past 10 on the things I was willing to partake in and do. So I hope that goes some way to describe my mental space at the time as to why I found myself doing the things I did, in the position that I was in. I know I'm probably going to be judged either way, and that's fine. But if this serves as some kind of warning to anybody else thinking about moving to Thailand in a similar life position to me, if it only makes them take a small step backwards to reevaluate what they're planning on doing when they get to Thailand, the things they expect to be able to do as a given, then I'm not going to say that it will have been worth it, because it won't. But it will be worthwhile having the knowledge that maybe one person will not fall into the same things that I did. Because I can promise you, it might be fun at the time, but when everything implodes, it's not worth it anymore. So let me begin. As I have already alluded to, I was married at home. I thought it was a good marriage, but I guess my wife didn't. I made very good money at that time. I ran my own business, and I didn't really like to work. I'm not saying that with any sense of pride, but I didn't. I operated my business and I worked really hard and I got it to a level where I could make good money by doing an hour or two per day. This was when I was with my first wife. She wasn't working, but she still wanted to go away on nice holidays to places like Goa in India. She wanted to go to Sri Lanka, and I took her business class all over to all the places she wanted to go. We had a child. She became a very important part of our lives, as is often the case. She was everything to me, and I was successful, yet always perhaps too distant. I thought I was making good money, I was providing a fantastic life for my family. Therefore, if I finished work at 12 and I wanted to go to the pub and have a few drinks with friends, I thought I was entitled to do that. I never cheated on my wife. That thought never crossed my mind, but in order for me to work hard, I needed to crash hard afterwards. I might have got to the stage where I did 3 hours of hard work in the morning, but the only way I would have been able to do that the following day would have been to have gone to the pub and get drunk, take a load off, take the stress off of the morning's work, and then I would be able to do the same thing again. I understand that my wife didn't see it that way in the slightest, and she started seeing other people. People as in plural, not person. The first time, she couldn't have picked a worse candidate. She thought he loved her, but that wasn't the case at all. He just loved ruining people's marriages. I found it in my heart to ignore that, tried my best to work in a way that didn't involve me having to crash so hard after work in order to be able to continue the following day. But what I did wasn't good enough, and she did it again. I forgave her that time, and the time after, and the time after, and the time after. I would have forgiven her again, but you will hate me for that, I know, but she was the love of my life. But that time, she actually got serious with this other guy, divorced me, and it was over. She took my daughter with her as well, and I spiraled out of control for a number of years, not doing anything, taking my share of the divorce proceedings, and yes, I bought a small house. But I just ate through a lot of the money over the next 3 or 4 years, just going to the pub all the time and drinking away my sorrows. When I noticed my money going down quicker than I wanted it to, I swallowed my pride and got a job. I had no choice, and that was a huge fall from grace, earning a fraction of what I earned at my peak, yet I was going into work every day, and boredom quickly took over. The only way I was able to cope was just to completely switch off, pretend I wasn't a person at all, pretend I was a robot. That allowed me to get through the next 7 whole years. My daughter would spend time with me 2 days a week. We had a really great relationship, and if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have been able to work as I did. That was the only reason I did work. She was getting older at this point, and I'm getting more and more tired of my life. Living in the past isn't healthy. It's not a healthy thing to do, but that's what I was doing. I was pretending I was still living my old life, where my wife accepted the negative things about me in order to benefit from the positive things about me, which was I was able to provide a great life for our family. By the time 2013 came around, a few years after this, still more work, my daughter went away to university, and I was very proud of that fact, that I saved money to pay for her entire tuition without her having to take out a loan. But aside from that, all I had was my small house and a little bit of savings, that before everything fell apart, I would have earned in 6 months. Life wasn't going according to plan, and I'd had enough. I'm definitely not like one of those guys who completely blames my ex-wife for divorcing me and for cheating on me so many times. I get it, I should have been there more. But I know who I am and what I'm capable of, and in order for me to do something good, I need to be able to relax afterwards. I really need to be able to switch off. You wake up in the morning, you switch on, and if you don't switch off, I'm still on at night, and I can't sleep, and I won't sleep for days, and I won't perform, and it was just a weakness I have, and I thought it was understood that that was a weakness I had. I thought as long as I was providing, that was okay, but I was wrong, and I will admit that. But at that moment in time, I was angry, furious in fact, and hoping that somehow I would get my life back on track where I could be the guy who made a lot of money and who would still be able to relax afterwards. I just didn't know how that was going to happen. Bring on Thailand. I'm sure many people may have seen that BBC documentary about Thailand that was released a few months ago. I can't remember when, but I saw it, and it made me go back in time to why I went to Thailand in the first place. I found it amusing, that BBC documentary, because it was obviously so one-sided against the guys that go to Thailand, against what you can do in Thailand, and I think it backfired on them. I saw that BBC documentary as a promotion for Thailand, as something to say, you don't need to be like me, as in that presenter. You can be different to that. You can find an actual girl who's not going to tear your life to shreds because you didn't do exactly what she wanted while giving her everything she wanted. You don't have to have this constant pressure forced on you by society. I think that documentary did a very good job of telling guys who perhaps were in a similar life position to what I was back then that you can indeed do something better and have something better by going to Thailand. Of course, they painted it in a very different light entirely, didn't they? About how bad things are in Thailand and how not nice things are in Thailand. But only an idiot would think that documentary was anything other than pure propaganda, targeted at people who perhaps are thinking about leaving, trying to convince them to remain as sheep. Anyway, I was watching something on the telly around about the moment in time I was talking about, maybe 2013. Must have been 2013, because that was the year when I went to Thailand, although it could have been the year before. That was a documentary about how girls left certain parts of Thailand to go to places like Bangkok or Pattaya to go to work in a bar because of a lack of other options. I saw that not as how the documentary was trying to portray it, these poor little innocent people without a choice in the world, forced to do something as degrading as this. That's not how I saw it. I saw it as these clever, beautiful girls who perhaps are too lazy to work on the farm like their family has done for generations, too lazy to get a job that perhaps isn't going to give them as much money as they think they deserve, and also girls prepared to use what they have to try to get ahead in the world. And if that's what they're going to do, that's what they would do. I didn't feel sorry for them, because it wasn't like they were from sub-Saharan Africa, from communities that didn't even have clean water to drink. It was just propaganda for the sake of propaganda, trying to convince people not to leave where you're from and seek something better. To accept where you are from, accept it's not as good as what else is out there, and just toe the line and do what you're told. It was that documentary that saw me booking a ticket to Thailand for a few months' time, which just so happened to be in 2013. I'd done a lot of international travel in my life. I always thought I was very well travelled, although Thailand was never a country I'd been to. I'd taken my ex-wife through my hard work, but obviously it wasn't me working the right way, otherwise she wouldn't have done what she did. But we went to Goa, Sri Lanka, as I said, but also Mexico, all over Europe, pretty much anywhere she wanted to go. Barbados was one of her favourites. We went to Florida a few times. We were a very well-travelled family, and I was proud of being able to do that. So when I got on the flight to Thailand, and I was still in my old ways, paying for business class, although I owned my house outright and had a bit of money, I guess spending a couple of grand at the time for business class tickets wasn't a good idea. But I didn't feel anything because I'd been on so many long-haul flights before. This was just another long-haul flight. Two, in fact, as we needed to change planes in Doha. I was looking forward to getting to Thailand and seeing what it was like. I didn't know how to picture it though. Like, if you're going to India, you can sort of picture what it's going to be like when you get there. Or if you're going to Mexico, you can picture what that's like. At Thailand, I had no idea what it was going to be like. I'd given myself a whole month there, just to take everything in, to see if what I was seeing about Thailand was true or not. And I quickly understood that there was so much more to Thailand than what that documentary I watched had said. Bangkok was a modern and vibrant city. Certain parts still steeped in history and intrigue, yet it was just like everything was turned up to the max and everyone was out and about trying to get theirs. Every time you turned your head, you saw a new building coming up, cranes dotting the skyline, high-rise buildings that I later learned weren't there 5 years ago, now shaping the landscape of this city. I quickly understood what all the Western propaganda was about. I honestly believe that the West was trying their level best to not allow its people to understand just how much more exciting the world was once you left the humdrum monotony of a country in decline. Thailand seemed like everything was possible, like if you wanted to do something, you didn't have to seek permission in the same ways you did at home. You didn't have to apply for all these ridiculous things that the government decided that you needed. You could just go and do it without much concern. Of course, they had rules and regulations, but they were so lax, you could skirt around them. You could avoid them if you knew the right person. And I just felt like this country was set up and I fit in exactly like I wanted to. Because it was like this was how I thought the world should be, and Thailand operated like that. Throughout my whole life, anything that was supposedly the norm in terms of what you were expected to do at home, I did everything I could to fight back against that narrative forced onto me by a government that I didn't vote for or that I didn't believe had my best interests at heart. I want to paint a picture of why I got into this mind frame and why Thailand made me feel so amazing. When I was still together with my wife, we had a really nice, detached, Victorian house, right at the peak of my earnings. Yes, I might have left for the pub at 1 pm to cool down to make sure I could continue working the following day, but it was a beautiful house and we both loved it. I had a solicitor, which I paid a lot of money for, to make sure everything that I did was within the rules. Again, the fact that you need a solicitor to do things is a sad state of affairs as it is. You shouldn't need that. Things should be easy, but that's beside the point. But according to my solicitor, we were able to replace the windows in our house, which happened to be a Grade 2 listed building. We needed to replace these very old, thin windows with PVC double glazing. We checked, and it looked like we were okay. And then you get those cretins, those little from the local council coming around to your house, telling you you're not allowed to put windows into your own house, and you need to pay money to put the other ones back in place. You know the sorts of people I'm talking about, those bearded left-wing lunatics who made it their life's mission to make everybody else's lives worse. And of course, they gravitate towards working for the council. It just makes you detest what your country is all about. In Thailand, things weren't like that, not in the slightest, and it felt like my own worldview was welcome at a place like Thailand, because everything seemed to fit exactly like I thought the world should be. You might be asking, how did I garner these opinions after only being in Thailand for a few hours? It was so plain to see. I was sold on Thailand immediately, and I felt like I had a completely new lease on life. My first night in Bangkok reaffirmed the feelings I was having just by being there. My understanding of that documentary I watched that caused me to go to Thailand was actually 100% accurate. You didn't walk into a bar and see these really sad-looking girls there who were terrified of all the foreigners coming in, who were there because if they didn't, their families would die of starvation like that stupid documentary was trying to portray. That wasn't the case at all. You had these bubbly and vivacious, beautiful girls that seemed to be so happy and smiley and okay. They were out to make as much money as they could, but fair play to them. It didn't look like they were forced to do that. It just looked like they couldn't be bothered to go and work in the 7-Eleven, where a girl that looked pretty similar to them was working behind the counter when I went to buy a pack of cigarettes. Why was this beautiful girl working here and all the other girls aren't? You have to understand it for what it was, don't you? Pure laziness and a desire to make as much money as they could, and if that's what they were going to do to get it, that's what they would do. And I quickly understood it for what it was. That allowed me to dive headfirst into the amazement of Thailand because of what you could do there. All these thoughts I was having that first night, it really did feel like Thailand was the Garden of Eden. But the thing that I got wrong the most, the biggest mistake that I made, which would ultimately cause me no end of heartache, was thinking that if you did meet a girl in a bar and she stopped working in the bar to be with you, she would not only be your girlfriend and potential life partner, maybe wife, but she would look up to you, center her world around you, and be there for you under your own ideas of what this is meant to be. I had it as in a money versus no money, provider versus receiver, and I guess that was the thing that tripped me up the most. If I'd never considered a relationship, if I'd never considered anything more than casual fun, I most likely would not have succumbed to the feelings like I was somehow a cut above, and I was looked up at as being a cut above. Because of that, there was no chance that somebody that stayed with you, if you wanted them to, would do anything other than make sure they made you the happiest version of yourself, in return for making sure that they could have the most benefit out of the relationship as possible. I've heard guys talking about similar things. I was paying, you should have done exactly what I wanted you to do. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm meaning is, I'm paying for everything. I'm giving money to you. I want to be able to pay for even more for you. I want to give you even more. And it's your job to make sure that I'm in the right mental space 24/7. If you can do that, you can have more and more and more. But in return, you can't go out to see friends. You can't go and get drunk. Or you can't get angry and nag or shout at me to pull me out of the right mental space. It's a compromise on both fronts. It's an understanding of what each party brings to the relationship, and I was always the pragmatic sort. What do you want from the relationship? This is what I would think anybody would be thinking in their mind. For example, what would any future girlfriend of mine want from a relationship? Most likely, as much money as possible, a nice house, a nice car. The best way for her to do that, though, would be to make sure that I was always in the right mental space. You want even more money? Make me happy so I can make more. What do I want from a relationship? The ability to have no stress, no pressure, no nagging, no demands, no anything other than the perfect reflection of my dream girl who I want to give the world to. It's give and take. You can have everything you want, but you have to be how I want you to be. It was a mistake, I know, because the problem was they want absolutely everything they want, yet they want to do it their way, and by doing it their way, they're indirectly making it worse for themselves, because they're not making sure that I'm in the right mental space to be able to do what they want in the first place. I hope that goes some way to understand exactly that Thailand isn't what many people hope it is. People are just the same everywhere in the world and won't do what's in their best interests if they don't want to do that. That's where I differ. I will do things that I don't want to do, on repeat, if that will give me what I want at the end. Why is that any different in Thailand? Why can't somebody who perhaps you get into a relationship with do things they don't want to do, to end up with what they really want in the future? I guess I just had it wrong, and I must admit to that. Though it does feel very good to get all this off my chest, because I feel like I've never had the chance to speak to anyone about it, because nobody that I know has had Thailand be a big part of their life. As you can gather, I had a fantastic time when I went to Thailand in 2013 for a month. I spent most of it in Bangkok, eyes wide open to all the possibilities there, but I spent a bit of time in Pattaya as well, which I regretted not spending more time there, but I knew that I was going to be returning for good as soon as possible. By the end of that month, I had decided that I was going back home to sell my house. I was going to get as much money together as I could, and I was going to move permanently to Thailand. I felt like I had my head back in the game, finally. I could quit that stupid job I didn't want, and I could start to make more money again, myself, instead of doing that degrading job. I already had a few different ideas about things to do. I remember returning home and seeing my daughter and telling her all about everything. The first thing she said to me after I'd finished speaking was, "You seem like your old self again." I told her I was. "I'm happy again, finally, and I found my place in the world, and you're going to have to come and visit me at some point." She said she probably would, though she never did. It took me 3 months to sell my house. I got rid of everything else I didn't need, my car, absolutely everything, and I got together about 220 grand. I tried to forget about the fact that I used to make more than that in a year when things were good, and understand that in Thailand, that goes a long way. There are things you can do there, so just get yourself there and enjoy yourself. I was 53 years old, and that scared me to think about. Up until Thailand, I always thought I was never going to have anything better than I had in my past life, but Thailand made me think otherwise. I felt like the best was yet to come, and I felt like I owed Thailand my life because of that. Up until going to Thailand, it was like I'd completely given up on life and I was just going through the motions. Now I wasn't going through the motions. I was living, finally, again, and it felt amazing to be able to do that. I got a retirement visa that was pretty straightforward, and I could extend that in Thailand. After spending a few weeks in the same hotel I stayed at when I was in Bangkok before, I rented a really small studio apartment in the Prakanong area of Bangkok, a 2-minute walk away from the BTS station, and just started living life. My life for the first year of being in Thailand was amazing, and everything was coming together just as I hoped it would. During the days, I would be working on my little project, and during the evenings, I would be down around Nana, drinking and meeting girls, and life was wonderful. I got back in touch with a few of my old contacts that I worked with in the past, and after about a year of being in Thailand, I was starting to make good money again. I don't want to give everything away in terms of what I did, but I found certain products that were produced in Thailand that I could export, and the contacts I had were in that industry, and I kind of just fell into making around 100,000 baht a week by the end of my first year. You've got to be very careful though. If you're making that kind of money in Thailand, I was pretty much spending nearly all of it. And if you were in Thailand around 2014, you know what you could get for your money. I worked until noon, and I did what I could to be able to work the following day, and that was to just go wild and go crazy. But this time I'm not going down to the pub with 3 or 4 friends. I'm going to the bars, and there's hundreds and thousands of girls everywhere, and I got carried away spending all that money I was earning. I thought that was going to last forever, and it was continuing. I was always looking for new things to do, new things to add in, but it was just going so well for me, and I felt like I was back. I was back, but not only that, I was living what I thought was every man's fantasy in the world's best city. I hadn't gotten into one relationship since I arrived in Thailand, not one, and perhaps that's why life was going so well for me, because I wasn't committed or with anybody seriously. And if I could go back to any moment in time and change anything about anything that I did in my life, it would be to continue in the same way I was continuing instead of doing what I did. She could have been girl number 40, could have been girl number 80, I have no recollection, but she was the first girl that I actually had back to my place, which was never a done thing. I don't know what it was about her, but she just seemed like the Thai version of my ex-wife. Perhaps that was a negative in itself because of what my ex-wife did, but it was just her mannerisms and how she carried herself that gave me these feelings. She was 31, so it wasn't like she was too young either. I never got bored of the conversations that you would have with girls that you met, even though they were always pretty much a carbon copy of the conversation you had with the last girl, and the last girl, and the one before that. Nice to meet you. Come from where? How long stay Thailand? I from. And usually that will be one of the provinces in the northeast of Thailand, known as Isan. You speak Thai? How old you? Guess how old me? And the list goes on. I enjoyed it. It was easy and basic and effortless. We weren't going to be getting into a conversation about politics or the state of the world. This was just basic human interaction about what you were going to do, what you were going to eat, and where you were going to go, and I liked that. But even though this was the same conversation I had countless times, with her it felt different, even though I've heard it before. And we actually went back to my place together, and she kind of never left from there. I remember, after she'd been with me for a couple of weeks at this point, I'm pretty much continuing the same lifestyle, but she's tagging along with me, so I'm not meeting other girls with her, but that was fine. If I went to a bar, she'd be with me. If I was drinking, she'd be with me, and that allowed me to continue doing what I was doing and bringing the money in. It was because she was okay to just be with me and to do the things my way that meant she was getting good money out of me because she was allowing me to exist in that frame of mind where it was possible for me to bring the money in. After she'd been with me for approximately a month, I was starting to feel like I had a really deep connection to her. I even had a conversation with her, again, did she understand it, where I explained to her who I was as a person and what I needed and how I'm able to function best. And if you can help me with that, we can do better and get more together. But if you don't help me and you make it worse, it's going to be worse for you just as much as it's going to be worse for me. And she said she understood, but I guess she didn't understand at all. We continued like this for about 6 months. I'm feeling like I've met what I could think as of my forever partner, and she's just perfect in every way. I'd pretty much been doing the same thing every day for those 6 months, and I was getting a bit tired and decided I wanted to leave Bangkok for a week and go somewhere more peaceful and relaxing, and we were going to go together. Up until this point, since I'd been living there, I hadn't left Bangkok once, just concentrating on living life and making money. But we had a week going to Koh Samet, which was an island about 2 hours drive from Bangkok, and then a boat ride. We got a taxi there to that pier, a speedboat across, and that's when you understand that Thailand isn't just one thing, it's so many things. And to have such a picturesque and scenic island so close to a capital city, it was like this could be our 3 month getaway. That was a very important time for our relationship. Things felt like we were getting a lot more serious between us. Things felt like we'd taken it up a notch, and we decided that we were going to get married. I wasn't too bothered, though, about getting married, but it was her who insisted that she would feel more comfortable if we were married. Her family would be happier if we were married, And also, we would be able to feel more comfortable with each other if we were married. And I agreed to go ahead with this because I didn't think it would change anything. Why would it? With that, we enjoyed our week on the island. They had some great fire shows that you could watch on the beach while sitting next to your beautiful girlfriend with a beer, understanding that you're not in a place that the West wants you to know about because it's too good. If everybody knew about this, the West wouldn't have any people left because why would you stay somewhere like that when you can do something so much easier and so much better and so much more fun for so much less money? And it really did feel like I was part of something bigger than I was. After that, though, we returned to Bangkok. Only 2,000 baht in the taxi as well, which was crazy to think about. You'd be spending that for 5% of the distance at home. Because of that, it only cost 6,000 baht to go in a taxi up to her hometown, which was in Surin. My immediate reaction to that part of Thailand was like this was where I was from at home in terms of the countryside feel. Yet while where I was from at home, the quality of the infrastructure was pretty similar to what it would have been in the nearest big city, in terms of the look of the houses and the buildings and everything else. They weren't rudimentary structures where I was from. It was just quality in the city and quality out of the city. However, here, it was like you had this countryside feel and everything was just so much more outdated. People lived in shacks with outside bathrooms that you had to scoop water with a bucket over yourself. Whole families would drive around on a motorcycle without helmets on. The 3-year-old child sat up front. But the thing that struck me the most was that people just seemed to be happy. People just seemed to get on with their lives and accept their lives for what they were. While they might not have had much, they weren't poor like people expect them to be. I mean, some people were poor, but poor is relative. They always seemed to have food to eat, drink to drink, and rice whiskey to get drunk on, and it was a very different existence to what I was used to. Again, that reaffirmed my understanding that the girls that left places like this to go and work, they weren't poor in the sense that they didn't do this, they would starve to death. They just didn't want to continue what their family did for generations, which was to farm and live a basic subsistence existence. Yet with all the modern technology that they seemed to have in their houses. In the village where my girlfriend was from, every house had a big television, everyone had mobile phones, most people had motorcycles in the family, and some people had pickups and cars. They weren't poverty stricken people in the slightest, and that's a huge misconception that people have. I felt a huge draw to that part of Thailand. I felt like I recognized what that part of Thailand was all about, and even though we only spent a week with the family, arranging the wedding for a few months' time, I felt like I wanted to spend more time there in the future because it was just like something I can't describe. The things I loved the most, and I might as well tell you because it's important to me, but in Bangkok, for example, and I'm not using this as an example to say it's good or bad, I'm indifferent about it, but in Bangkok, you would see people always wearing helmets on motorcycles, usually, and it was always police checks and people being pulled over, and it was more modern. But in a place like that village, it was like the law didn't exist there. When we were there, someone was building a house. I asked, how did they get permission to build it? What's the process like? And the girlfriend looked at me like, they're just building it. I would learn later that technically you were meant to seek permission to build somewhere, and if you were in Bangkok doing that, you probably would have done. But there, at a place like that, it was a free-for-all where you could just do anything you wanted to. And if you did something wrong, all you had to do was pay somebody and you'd be fine. I adored that about that part of Thailand. It was like you could do things like this in Bangkok, but not on the scale that you could do somewhere like that. And it was very interesting because I ran into a guy that lived close to that village who seemed to be the epitome of a Thai guy come good. He had a fleet of luxury cars, a huge mansion, and he made his money by buying things from farmers and selling them on. It was clear that he was doing things his way, regardless of what the law was. He was just doing what he wanted. At the time, I didn't pick up on the fact that the guy was Thai Chinese. I would go down that rabbit hole later on in this relationship when you start to understand that the vast majority of people in Thailand who have money, the vast majority of Thai people who have money, they are Thai Chinese. Second generation people, maybe their parents or grandparents came from China. Thailand had problems with people like this in the past, and all these people took on Thai names, and basically, if you see someone in Thailand that's got a lot of money, more often than not, they will be part Chinese. If you see someone that's 100% Thai, the chance of them having something in comparison to the Thai Chinese is so marginal that it's a very rare occurrence. As this takes you down the rabbit hole of understanding what this is all about, it makes you stop thinking. Is there something about different people, about where they're originally from, that gives them a better go of things? But it did seem to be that the Thai Chinese just had an easier go of things. Or were they just cleverer? Were they just that way inclined to be able to do things better than anybody else? At the time, though, I didn't see it that way. I just saw it as a Thai person come good. And my girlfriend, of course, was 100% Thai. No Chinese in her whatsoever. So to think of her in the same way as those other people would be incorrect, because she wouldn't have the same abilities, it seemed, to do the same kind of things. But I didn't see it that way at the time. We were back in the village 2 months later, doing the wedding ceremony. It was an event, let's just say that it was an event. I always found it very quaint how they did things, but I felt special to be able to be part of it. You can be part of something and respect it, and take part in it and do it, and hold feelings inside of you as to think, this is so backwards, and this is so quaint, but you respect it for what it is, and you move ahead with it. One thing that is happening, though, as we're doing more things and going to more places, I'm taking a step back from the work that I was doing, and the money isn't coming in the same way anymore. I'm just not able, and this is a huge weakness of mine, to focus on multiple things at once. I can give my sole focus to one thing, and that will go well. But now my sole focus was about learning about the village, learning about that part of Thailand, understanding my girlfriend and where her mind was, learning about Thailand and how things work in places like this. And that was consuming me, and it was an interesting time, but I wasn't making any money. I just simply lacked the ability to do both. After getting married, though, when we went back to Bangkok, I did get back into the swing of what I was doing before, and I started to make money again. I never came close to the 100,000 baht, though, that I made, although I tried, and for the first few months after being married, things were perfect. My wife was helping me to achieve what I was achieving, but one thing that I'm noticing since we're married is she's not as willing to go out and drink as she used to do. She's distracting me when I'm working, asking for money to go out herself to see friends. She starts talking about wanting a car because it would be good to have one, and I agreed to buy one, although I bought it in my name. Of course I did. But she's not helping me as much with my work anymore, and that's having a big effect. Some people listening may think what I'm talking about is stupid or doesn't make sense. Pull yourself together. But I know who I am, and I know how my mind works. And how my mind works is I can't have any distractions. I need the people around me to assist me to get the best out of myself, which in turn is beneficial for the people around me. But my wife obviously didn't see it that way. I'm still happy though, still trying my best, but it's getting to the point now where I'm not able to switch off after working, and the following day's work is getting harder and harder, and it gets to the point after we've been married for about 6 months, where I just completely packed it in and decided to retire without saving any of all that money I earned, because I blew it all. But I did have what I came to Thailand with left, and it only seemed like the best thing to do from there was to leave Bangkok and go and put down some roots in the village. Big mistake. Not because I didn't like the village, not because I didn't like how things worked there, not because I got bored there, not because I didn't like the people there or what they did, but because it removed so much of the control away from me and put it in the hands of my wife, which ultimately would have been the cause of everything to go wrong for me. The thing was, though, it was also the cause of everything going wrong for her as well. But I guess she didn't see it that way, although I would like you to make your mind up about that at the end. We talked about it for a few months. We didn't just rush into it, but we did decide with what I had, again around 220 grand, we would go to the village, buy some land, build a house, and then I would be semi-retired. I wanted to do something else to make more money because that was what I enjoyed doing, but I wanted to take a step back and involve my wife in this and allow her to have a bigger piece of things, so I didn't need to have that feeling like after working I needed to crash completely to be able to exist properly the following day. It was like I was taking a step back and she was taking a step forwards, and that would be better for both of us. I guess we spent around 100 grand on the land and the house, which in hindsight was more than we needed to have spent because the house was bigger than we needed. And while that was taking place, we just stayed quite close by in a very cheap room. It was fun to watch the progress and have a new purpose and a new project to be involved with. I didn't take a step back to think that putting just under half of everything I had into a house in a village in my wife's name was a bad idea, because I saw what I was doing as beneficial for both of us. I still saw who I was and what I needed as being so obvious that my wife should know who I was and what I needed, and if she wanted the very best of everything, she would have to make sure she didn't put me in the wrong mental space, because that would be bad for everyone. Finally moving in, though, that was a really great experience. I designed the inside of the house myself. Again, I remember doing that on multiple houses that I bought with my ex-wife back at home. We moved all the time, buying a house, renovating it and selling it on and moving again, not only making money from my business, but also from the houses that we flipped and lived in. It was great to be able to take on that designer role again, because I always enjoyed it. I guess I probably spent a bit more money than that on another few features of the house that weren't exactly necessary. Spent a bit of money on an outside place to park the car and some other bits, which all in maybe spent 120 grand. I had 100 grand left. Not making money at this time though, but about to start on the next project, whatever it was going to be. That's the thing, I am able to make money. So I just decided to make sure that my wife could help so I didn't need to go all in mentally, because I was getting a bit too old to do that. I was still of the mind that we need to be able to export things back home. That's how I made good money before. I had contacts in industries at home who needed that. It was clear that where we were, there was absolutely nothing that we would be able to export from there, because there was no industry in the village. In the main city, there were a few things, but nothing like Bangkok. While I toyed with the idea of going to Bangkok for a few days to stock up and ship things and spend time in the village, that's not what I chose to do. I really wanted to take a step back, so I decided against continuing doing something similar. My wife was very keen to prove herself. She saw that I made good money before and she wanted to be able to do the same. And I guess I just had a huge sense of overconfidence because every time I put my mind to something in life, it had always come good for me. So I was confident that if I put my mind to something here, that would be good as well. My wife suggested that we open a shop. It seemed to be one of the only things we could have done, and this was just to sell farm supplies. We didn't want to be a small shop like they were in the village, which actually charged more than you could buy things for at a proper shop a bit further away. We wanted a big place in the village where people would buy from us. We wanted to be the place where people from the village would buy things, as well as adjoining villagers. They'd buy things from us instead of having to drive all the way to the city, and it felt exciting to have a very different project to be working on. Being a guy who had always been in business before, I knew exactly what research needed doing, what we needed to look into, and I felt like I was a really great candidate to do a business like this. We spent 4 or 5 months doing a lot of research, doing a lot of investigation, and the first thing that quickly became apparent, which I knew deep down was going to be the case, was that doing something like this, we're not going to make a lot of money, we're not going to make great money, but we might be able to make enough money to go away occasionally, enjoy ourselves, and for me, in that moment in my life and my mental health, just take a step back. I was thinking health was important than money at that time. I just wanted to be okay. That was all I wanted, just be okay. So I didn't get too concerned after everything pointed to the fact we might only make 30 or 40,000 baht a month. Perhaps it was also my wife's constant talking about how she knew exactly what she was doing, how she wanted to prove herself, how this was what she would have done if she had the money herself instead of coming from a very poor family. And I should have just taken that as an excuse, because there are ways and means, if you're that way inclined, to make things happen for yourself. But I did want to allow her to prove herself, because I know how good it feels to have an idea for it to come good. With that in mind, I invested some money into a really great piece of land in a good location that thousands of people who lived in the vicinity would be able to get to easier than going and buying things elsewhere. At the price we were able to sell things for, we could sell things cheaper than the smaller shops because we got it in bulk, and I paid for the construction and everything. And because I was that way inclined to be able to do things, I knew if it didn't work, I would be able to do something myself. With that in mind, I guess I spent 70 grand getting everything set up, and another 10 grand for the stock. I had about 20 left. I hadn't had that little money since I was 19 years old, but I was sure of my abilities if I needed my abilities in the future. Sadly though, that business, while making some money, I miscalculated, probably about 5 times miscalculation, because it was making money, but nothing close to 30 or 40,000 a month I was hoping for. It was maybe 6 to 9,000 profit, and it wasn't enough. That meant my money was going down and there wasn't much left. When I had just over 10 grand left, I understood, okay, my wife can do this, I'll get back into the thing I knew before. I knew I could, but I would have to go to Bangkok. So my wife stayed in the village, and I did that. One of the contacts who I'd done business with in the past countless times agreed to take another load of things from me that I shipped. It took a very long time for me to find these things on the ground in Bangkok for the price I found them at. This wasn't a place you could just go and buy something at. It was, well, it doesn't really matter. So I shipped out a load of this stuff, 10 grand's worth of stuff, pretty much what I had left. and I was waiting to receive 13 grand, which is what I sold it for, from my contact. I guess he couldn't have chosen a worse time to rip me off because he didn't pay me. I couldn't get in touch with him, and that was a very oh dear moment if I'd ever have one. Instead of trying to take stock of things and think now, how am I going to fix this? Because I might have been able to fix it. I had other contacts and I could have been forwarded money. I went into a huge state of panic instead. Instead of trying to find ways and means to get out of this, because things happened to me in the past like this many times, and while before I saw something like that as being a roadblock, the cost of being in business, perhaps I was getting older and more worried about things and thinking about the future more. So instead of pulling myself together and sorting this out, I wasn't able to. I just panicked and got on the drink, went back up to the village driving the car that I had while blind drunk. I'm not proud of that. I'm not proud of the fact that I was pulled over by the police who saw I was blind drunk and I gave him 2,000 baht to look the other way. I couldn't even walk properly. And that's the price, I guess, of driving a car while so drunk that I had no business to be driving. Less than 50 quid. It didn't help the fact that I probably had less than 100,000 baht to my name, though, when I arrived back at the village. My wife was there, saying she needs something, which she often said, but I wasn't able to give it to her. It was like a different feeling altogether. Like, hang on, there's no love here. She's with me for the money. Now I don't have any money, and she's not going to help me to get back into the right frame of mind in order to make more money, because she won't understand that that's necessary for me. And after being there for only a week, it was alarming to see who my wife really was. Alarming is the only word I can use. It was as if she wasn't able to understand. The only way that we're going to get out of this is if you help me. And how you help me is to not make me feel worse than I already feel and to make me feel better. But she didn't get that, and she just started complaining, saying she was busy with the shop. I'm trying. I'm not making much money. I guess it was a very rude wake-up call. What I had with my wife wasn't real at all. It was all fake, and she didn't have the mental capacity to understand what she needed to do to try to make things better for us. Instead, she was more keen on cheating on me with a guy in the village. The thing this time, and how it was different to my ex-wife who cheated on me, my new wife wasn't the love of my life. She was just someone I loved a bit, my life partner who allowed me to be the best version of myself when she was how I needed her to be. And when she did that, I just thought, I'm not having this. So I took what little I could and left. I wasn't heartbroken about losing my wife. I was heartbroken about the fact that I didn't have any money left and I wasn't where I needed to be mentally to make more. So after selling the car, I just flew back home, shocked about what had happened. Home is where I remain today. I haven't been able to get that old spark back. I'm too old now anyway. While I guess being from where I'm from allowed me to at least live in a place that's okay and have a life that's livable without having to suffer, it's a far cry away from the life I used to live. I never sought medical help for my mental weaknesses until I returned back from Thailand, and yes, my problems were medically documented as being someone who's very good at focusing on one particular thing and nothing else. Someone who can't take any outside distraction when he's trying to do something, because that will prevent him from doing something. And I wish I had taken medical advice when I was younger, because that could have allowed me to have a better go. I didn't, though. What I would say, though, to anybody is if you're in Thailand, don't expect there to be real love there. Maybe sometimes there will be, but not often, but don't expect it. I suppose this goes just the same as if you're at home trying to do something. Don't expect the people you're with, the people who need you in their lives to make their lives as good as they want their lives to be, don't expect them to understand that their actions are equally as important in your success as your actions are. I can do my absolute best, I did my absolute best, and I made a lot of money in my life. But the moment the person I'm with isn't a team player, isn't my partner, the moment they're against me or not on the same page as me, I crumble and I can't do it anymore. And then the person who was with me loses and doesn't benefit the same way anyway. That was a huge part of my life and a regret of mine. Also, a big mistake is letting the person you're with have any control over you. When I built that house, of course it went into my wife's name, yet I just saw it as being okay, she could scam me out of the house. And then what's she going to get? Nothing. If she understands that she needs to help me to get back on track, and that means being my perfect wife, she's going to do that because she's going to see a benefit. But it didn't work like that. So putting something into someone else's control is a definite no, and you shouldn't do it. Other than that, I would just say don't do anything stupid. Think about the worst case scenario in everything you're doing, and if that worst case scenario is you losing everything, don't do it. Don't be overconfident like I was. I was overconfident, and that is what came back to bite me the most, and life since I returned all those years ago has never been the same again. I can't be the same person again because I'm just not there mentally. It's taken me a long time to accept that and to come to terms with it, but I have, and Thailand is where I should be really, but I just was never able to pull myself together enough to ever get back.